The rain hammered against the windshield like 1,000 tiny fists as Marcus drove home from his double shift at the warehouse. His eyes burned with exhaustion, his shoulders ached, and all he could think about was collapsing into bed beside his sleeping son. Being a single father meant every day was a battle against time, money, and the crushing weight of doing it all alone. He'd been fighting that battle for 3 years now, ever since his wife walked out, leaving nothing but a note on the kitchen counter and a hole in their lives that never quite healed. The highway stretched empty before him, slick and black under the storm. It was nearly midnight, and Marcus was counting down the minutes until he could kick off. His steel-toed boots and check on 7-year-old Jaden one more time before sleep claimed him. But then he saw something that made his foot slam on the brake pedal. A small figure stood on the shoulder of the road, barely visible through the sheets of rain. At first, Marcus thought his tired eyes were playing tricks on him. Nobody would be out here, not in this weather, not at this hour. But as his truck slowed, the headlights revealed the impossible truth. A little girl, no more than 5 or 6 years old, stood completely alone in a tattered pink dress that clung to her tiny frame. She wasn't crying or waving for help. She just stood there, staring straight ahead with an expression that would haunt Marcus for the rest of his life. He pulled over immediately, his heart hammering. Every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. Marcus grabbed his jacket from the passenger seat and jumped out into the storm, rain instantly soaking through his work shirt. As he approached, the little girl didn't move, didn't even seem to notice him. Her dark hair was plastered to her face, and her lips had taken on a bluish tint that sent panic through his chest. "Hey, sweetheart," Marcus said gently, kneeling down to her level. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girl's eyes slowly focused on him, but she didn't answer. Marcus wrapped his jacket around her shoulders, feeling how cold her skin was beneath the wet fabric. She was shivering violently, her small body trembling like a leaf in winter wind. Without waiting for answers, he scooped her up in his arms. She weighed almost nothing. "Let's get you warm, okay? We'll figure everything else out." Marcus carried her to his truck and cranked the heat up as high as it would go. He kept emergency supplies in the back, a habit, formed from years of being prepared for anything Jaden might need. He found a blanket and wrapped it around the little girl, rubbing her arms gently to help her circulation. She sat perfectly still, staring at the dashboard with those same haunted eyes. "Can you tell me your name?" Marcus asked softly. "Emma," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet he almost missed it over the sound of the rain. "That's a beautiful name." "I'm Marcus." "Emma, where do you live? Where's your family?" Tears began streaming down her face, mixing with the rainwater. "Mama said she'd come back. She told me to wait right there. She said she just needed to think for a while." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He'd seen enough of life's cruelties to understand what had likely happened, but his mind rebelled against it. What kind of person could leave a child on the side of a highway in a storm? He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, his hands shaking with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. The dispatcher told him to bring Emma to the nearest hospital, where police and child services would meet them. As Marcus drove, he kept glancing over at the little girl bundled in his jacket and blanket. She'd stopped shivering, but she still had that faraway look in her eyes, like she was somewhere else entirely. "Emma, how long were you standing out there?" he asked gently. "I don't know. It got dark. Then it got really dark." Her voice was flat, emotionless, as if she'd used up all her feelings and had nothing left. "You're safe now, sweetheart. I promise." At the hospital, nurses whisked Emma away while Marcus gave his statement to a police officer. Detective Sarah Chen listened carefully, her expression growing grimmer with each detail. She explained that they'd start searching for Emma's mother immediately, but Marcus could tell from her tone that she'd seen cases like this before. He wanted to leave to get back to Jaden, but something kept him rooted to the uncomfortable plastic chair in the waiting room. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a social worker named Patricia emerged and sat down beside him. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much suffering. "Emma's going to be okay physically," Patricia said. "She's malnourished and dehydrated, but she'll recover. Emotionally, though, that's going to take time." You saved her life tonight. Mr. Hayes, another hour in that storm in her condition. Have you found her mother? Marcus interrupted. Patricia shook her head. We're working on it. The detective is checking missing persons reports. But honestly, this looks like abandonment. Emma says they'd been living in their car for weeks. Her mother has been struggling with addiction, and apparently she just reached a breaking point. Marcus ran his hands over his face. What happens to Emma now? We'll place her in emergency foster care while we investigate. The system will take care of her. The system? Marcus knew all about systems. He'd grown up in foster care himself, bouncing from home to home until he aged out at 18. Some of his placements had been good, but others had been nightmares that still crept into his dreams. The thought of Emma entering that same lottery made his chest tight. Can I see her? Just to say goodbye. Patricia studied him for a moment, then nodded. Room 247, but just for a few minutes. Marcus found Emma sitting up in a hospital bed, looking impossibly small against the white sheets. She'd been cleaned up and dressed in a hospital gown, and someone had combed her dark hair. When she saw him, something flickered in her eyes, the first real emotion he'd seen from her. Hi, Emma, Marcus said, pulling a chair close to the bed. I just wanted to check on you before I head home. Are you leaving? The question carried such weight, such fear, that Marcus felt his throat constrict. I have to get back to my son. His name is Jaden. He's 7 and he'll wake up worried if I'm not there. Emma nodded slowly, her small hands clutching the blanket. You're a good daddy. I try to be. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Emma reached out and took his hand. Her palm was so small in his, delicate as a bird's wing. She looked up at him with those dark eyes that had seen far too much for someone so young. Mr. Marcus? She whispered. Yes, sweetheart. Thank you for stopping. Mama always said nobody stops anymore. She said people don't care about other people. Marcus squeezed her hand gently. Your mama was wrong about that. Lots of people care. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Will you come back? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. He should say no. He should explain that he had his own life, his own child to worry about, his own mountains to climb every single day. He was barely keeping his head above water as it was. But looking at Emma's face, at the desperate hope flickering there, he couldn't form the words. I'll come back, he promised. Over the next 3 days, Marcus visited Emma every evening after work. He brought her books and colouring supplies, and they'd sit together in comfortable silence or talk about small things, favourite colours, animals, whether chocolate or vanilla was superior. Emma never asked about her mother, and Marcus never brought her up. On the 4th day, Detective Chen called him. They'd found Emma's mother in a motel 2 states away. She'd been arrested on drug charges and had admitted to leaving Emma on the highway. She was in no condition to care for a child and had relinquished her parental rights. Emma was officially a ward of the state. That evening, Marcus sat in his truck outside the hospital for 20 minutes before going in. Jaden was at his grandmother's house for the night. Marcus's former mother-in-law still came through for them sometimes. Despite everything, he stared at the building's entrance, his mind racing. He was 32 years old, working 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads. His life was held together with duct tape and determination. He had no business taking on another responsibility. It was crazy. It was impossible. But he also kept seeing Emma's face in that storm, kept hearing her small voice saying nobody stops anymore. When he walked into her room, Emma was drawing a picture. She looked up and smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. Mr. Marcus, look, I drew you and me and Jaden. The picture showed 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. Emma, I need to talk to you about something important. She put down her crayons, suddenly serious. You know how you need a family to take care of you. Marcus began, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Well, I've been thinking. I have a big heart and a small apartment. And Jaden's been asking God for a sister in his prayers every night, even though he doesn't know about you yet. Emma's eyes went wide. What I'm saying is, if it's okay with you, and if the social workers agree, and if we can make it all work somehow, I'd like you to come live with me and Jaden, as a family, For a long moment, Emma just stared at him. Then she launched herself off the bed and into his arms, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Marcus held her tight, his own tears falling into her hair. "Is that a yes?" he asked, his voice breaking. Emma pulled back just enough to look at him. This was when she whispered the words that broke him completely. "I prayed every night in that car that God would send me a daddy who wouldn't leave. And then you stopped." Marcus cried then, really cried, for the first time since his wife had left. He cried for Emma's pain and his own, for Jaden's loneliness and all the broken pieces of their lives. But he also cried with relief and hope and the overwhelming certainty that this was right. The process wasn't easy. There were home studies and background checks, interviews and waiting periods. Marcus had to prove he could financially support 2 children, had to rearrange his entire life. His apartment was too small, so he moved to a 2-bedroom place that stretched his budget to breaking. He cut back to 1 job and relied on his mother-in-law more than he wanted to admit. But 6 months later, Emma came home for good. Jaden took to having a sister like he'd been waiting for her his whole life. They fought over toys and bathroom time, but they also protected each other fiercely. Emma's nightmares slowly decreased. Her laughter gradually increased. 5 years later, Marcus stood in the kitchen of their small house. They'd managed to buy one, somehow, watching Emma and Jaden argue over what movie to watch. Emma was 11 now, loud and opinionated, with a smile that could light up a room. She still had hard days, still saw a therapist, still carried scars that might never fully heal. But she was theirs. That night, after the kids were in bed, Marcus sat on the porch alone. He thought about that rainy night, about the moment he almost drove past, too tired to stop. Life hadn't gotten easier since then. If anything, it had gotten harder. But it had also gotten fuller, richer, more meaningful than he ever imagined possible. His phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Night, Dad, love you." He smiled and typed back, "Love you too, sweetheart." Sometimes, Marcus thought, the moments that change everything don't announce themselves with trumpets. Sometimes they look like a little girl standing in the rain, and the simple choice to stop when everyone else drives by. Sometimes being a hero just means showing up when it matters most. Even when you're exhausted, even when it's hard, even when you think you have nothing left to give. And sometimes the life you save ends up saving you right back.